Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to session 5, the final session of our CAS virtual conference on closing the digital divide, access, instruction, and equity. I'm Bill Silva. I'm the Associate Executive Director at the Connecticut Association of Schools, and I'll be the moderator for our panel discussion, which is a principal's perspective on access, equity, and instruction. And we're honored to have as our panelists Connecticut's 3 principals of the year for 2020. So our session is being recorded and it will be posted on our CAS website. And we do have Q&A. If you want to type in some questions, we will do our best to get to your questions during the course of the presentation. Otherwise, I have some questions for our panelists, and that's what I will use to start us off once I introduce them. So again, we will make the recording available, and if you stick around at the very end at 4 o'clock when we finish with the panel, I will have a short wrap up for the entire conference if you would like to stay on for just a minute or 2 more. All right, well, without further ado, I will introduce our 3 panelists. First, we have Barbara Silverio, is the principal of the Isabel M. Pearson School in Winstead, and she is the 2020 CAS Elementary School Principal of the Year. Ms. Silverio joined the Pearson administration in 2014 when the Winchester Public Schools became part of the state's Alliance District program. Working with a broad network of stakeholders, she embarked upon whole school reform initiatives with the goal of building a learning community focused on transparency, accountability, equity, and academic rigor. As a result of Ms. Silverio's leadership, Pearson School's Next Generation Accountability Index ratings increased substantially, and the school was recognized by the Connecticut State Department of Education as a school of distinction for the academic growth of students with high needs in mathematics. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Next, Joy Wright. Joy is the principal of King Philip Middle School in West Hartford, and she is the 2020 CAS Middle School Principal of the Year. 5 years ago, Ms. Wright introduced the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence's Ruler program at King Philip and led her staff through its implementation. Since its rollout, Ruler has helped transform the climate and culture at King Philip, creating an environment where students feel physically safe and emotionally connected to teachers and to one another. Ms. Wright has also spearheaded several other innovative programs at King Philip, including the first middle school Gay Straight Alliance and the first middle school transition program called Where Everybody Belongs. She also piloted the collaborative proactive solutions process for students with challenging behaviors. Welcome, Joy, happy to have you.
Glad to be here, thank you.
And our last panelist, Dr. Nancy Dowling, is the principal of Bunnell High School in Stratford, and she is the 2020 CAS High School Principal of the Year. As a vehicle for collaborative leadership and shared decision-making, Dr. Dowling established the Bunnell Faculty Council, bringing together staff to improve the school community. She has also developed a robust student advisory program, instituted AP freshman rounds, and led the successful implementation of a mastery-based learning model. Dr. Dowling's initiatives have significantly increased student engagement and academic achievement. Last year, Bunnell was recognized by U.S. News and World Report as a best high school in the United States, and the University of Connecticut recognized Bunnell as a top 10 high school in Connecticut in the UConn Early College Experience Program. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to join you.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here and to get a chance to hear from you, to reflect a bit on your experience as principals, particularly in relation to the themes of our conference on closing the digital divide in relationship to access, instruction, and equity. So I thought I'd ask each one of you to talk just a little bit, first of all, to let our listeners know what model of instruction are you using in your school this school year, at least at the beginning of the school year, and maybe just a little bit on how these past weeks or so have gone in terms of getting used to that new model and how's it going. So anyone like to start?
I'll start.
Great.
So in the Winchester Public Schools, we're a relatively smaller district, pre-K through grade 6. But we started, our first day of school was August 31st. And we have approximately 80% of our student population. First of all, there was a parent survey that was given out to parents, and they had the option to choose in-person learning, distance learning, or to homeschool. And we used the results of that survey to set up our class lists. And we have approximately 80% of our students that are attending full-time, 5 days a week in person in the classroom. So that's roughly in every grade level, there's 4 classrooms. And so we designated one teacher who felt the most comfortable and was the most proficient at technology to be the distance learning teacher. And so the remaining 15 to 20% of the students whose parents opt for distance learning, that teacher is full-time with those students in a Google Classroom instruction format. The students that are distance learning are required to attend, excuse the noises, we're at dismissal. They're required to attend from, the same amount of time during the same school day, and it's virtually a synchronous learning experience for those students, and the teacher teaching in present time with those kids and interacting with the kids. And it's the same type of schedule that the other teachers are teaching, and following the same schedule. With a couple tweaks for specials, recess, they take on their own. But so our students that are attending in person are full-time in the classroom. They have dividers around them so that there's a protective element physically for them. We did change the layout of the classroom so that they're facing in rows, which is a little, hard for us as educators. We know that's not, in the best interest of them developmentally in terms of intellectual collaboration. However, health and safety has to be number one. The students are doing wonderful, wearing their mask all day. We have mask breaks built into the school day where a teacher can rotate. There's spots located. We're not using lockers, so the hallways are virtually empty. There's spots in the hallway designated for mask breaks, and a teacher may rotate students throughout, a class period 4 at a time to just go out in the hallway, take off your mask 6 feet apart, take a break, or instruct outside. We've been very fortunate to have good weather, and we are instructing outside during different times of the day. So that's our model right now in Winchester.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Joy, what's happening at King Philip?
So in West Hartford, we're doing the hybrid model. And our hybrid, unlike some other districts, is a 1 week for one group where we've split the students A through K. Red group, L through Z is blue group. And so each week that group, for example, this week it's the red group, is in person in the building, Monday through Friday, and we have dismiss at 12:50. And so they kind of grab their lunch, they go home, teachers have lunch, and then they log on with the group that's been home during the day. And this is our blue group, and they kind of do small instruction group work with them. And so it allows us to keep our numbers very low as a result. I mean, typically I have about 800 students. So we've cut that in half. The parents as across the state of Connecticut have the option for choosing a remote option. So we do have a separate remote learning school because we are a larger district. And so we've got, I think about 150 of our homeschool students have enrolled in that program, in that school. And there's probably, I think, total of 700 for the 612 option. And then there's a separate remote elementary school as well. And so if I usually have 885 in my physical building split between the two, I have about 710. So there's the option, and parents still have those options. We're going to review it probably mid-October. And so elementaries will come back first, and then we'll see how that goes. And hopefully week, we'll be able to come back by early November as a full group.
Interesting.
That's great. Thank you. And Nancy, what's happening at Bunnell?
Sure. At Bunnell High School and Stratford High School in Stratford, we have adopted a hybrid model. We have actually 4 cohorts. Cohort A attends in-person learning on Mondays and Tuesdays. Cohort B, I should say cohort A is A to L. Cohort B, M to Z, attend in-person learning on Thursdays and Fridays. Cohort C attends in-person learning 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And cohort D is comprised of our 5-day distance learning students. Wednesdays, the building is closed. It's considered our deep cleaning day. We are using a 2x4 block schedule. And on Mondays and Thursdays, it's 1, 3, 5, 7. Tuesday, Friday, 2, 4, 6, 8. Other than that, our greatest challenges, I'll start with. Our greatest challenges were to schedule cafeteria for approximately 400 to 450 students on those 4 days when we have in-person learning. And to also accommodate our teachers to have their daily contractual prep time. But I'm really happy to report and proud to share that things are going very, very nicely here. We adjusted from a 2 o'clock to a 1:15 dismissal time. Kids are phenomenal in terms of masks, social distancing, the directionals that we changed in the hallways as well as the stairwells. Teachers are terrific as well, setting a terrific example and being flexible in terms of their presence in the hallways and escorting students to and from the cafeteria. All in all, it's been a wonderful start. And I will share what I was sharing in our green room before, that earlier in the week, a couple of the seniors said to me in the cafeteria, Dr. Dowling, I think Bunnell can do it. I think we can stay open. Everybody's doing a great job. They're following the rules. I think we can do it. And it's that team spirit that I hope and believe will carry us at least through the beginning of November, when as a district, we will collectively reassess where we're at, and see how we're doing and see if we can expand the current model.
That's great. Thank you. So Nancy kind of brought up, one of the challenges specifically, and maybe we should talk about those, and then we can talk about some of the successes and the things that you're particularly proud of. So even thinking back to last March, and then what that experience was like, and then obviously planning over the summer, and then opening back up again for the fall. So what, and I'm trying to connect it to our conference theme here in terms of access, instruction, equity, all related to the digital divide. Where did you see in your districts and in your schools the biggest challenge to making sure all students had equal access, that there was equity, and that those matters of instruction were adhered to? So again, maybe we can start with you, Barbara, to share on that.
Sure. So in the springtime, quickly we discovered that there was an inequity, and we had to really scramble. So first and foremost, getting internet access to every student was a challenge. The Chromebooks were something that we had plenty of because of our Commissioner's Network grant funding. So we distributed Chromebooks immediately, and we were able to provide every single student with a working Chromebook, which was fortunate. But not every parent had internet access. We had our 6th graders on hotspots, and those hotspots failed. We had one IT person who was, working tirelessly to try to resolve one situation at a time, but, working with families to try to help them with the technological issues was one big hurdle that took us a long time to rectify, but we addressed every student case by case, made phone calls, had to replace Chromebooks as they started to fail. I live in town. I was literally stacking Chromebooks on my front porch, setting up appointments for people to come pick them up. So we were able to provide access. There's one family, I think we got to maybe May, that didn't have internet access, that we had to finally help get internet access. And so we were able to do that because, again, we're a small district and we could provide that support. The other issue was that there were parents that were working, that, students with special needs or disabilities that they needed a lot of support with, and parents were just not home. And, whoever was the caregiver didn't feel as though they could support that child for whatever reason the same way a teacher could. So, getting the same amount of service hours and support for students with special needs and disabilities that struggled, may not have been as proficient working on the computer, parents not feeling like they had the confidence to work through some of the technological challenges there. And so, again, that was a case by case, and, really relying heavily on our case managers and our teachers to make specialized appointments, individualized small group, and figuring out the technology of how do we get kids from different areas into one Google Meet or one Zoom session. How do we do that safely, and how do we protect all of the rights of those students? And so a lot of things to iron out, but we definitely had, got some momentum as we got more comfortable with the situation. But it continued, and then the engagement of students and making sure that every child was engaged online was a challenge. We were making phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the parent would say, I can't get them. They're depressed, they're sad, they miss their friends. I don't know what to do. I can't get them to log in the morning. And so it's, the counseling needs and the support, the social emotional supports were heavy, and we had to rely on our counselors to really support that process as well. Kids were sleeping in until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so trying to get them, we were not requiring at the time synchronous learning in the spring. So we learned that, we're going to do things differently if we have to do this again in the fall. And it's setting those expectations definitely helped quite a bit in making it very clear what the expectations were with parents and kids.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joy, you want to share challenges and then from the spring and then to the fall, and maybe how things changed over that time?
Yeah, I think some of the same challenges, how do we make sure everyone has a device? I have to say I was really proud of our district, and God bless our tech folks who were breaking down Chromebook carts to make sure that families had devices. And for those who may not have had internet access, they provided them with hotspots to make sure that they were able to access. Because it's funny, we thought we were going to be out for 10 days to kind of figure it out. And then within 5, we were up and running, and we were synchronous for most of the day, where we called them office hours, but they were really check-ins with kids. You mirror your class till about 11:30 or so, or 12 o'clock every day. And then from then it was working independently. And so it was figuring out for teachers as well, because this was new before for some, at least at KP. Some of our teachers were using Google Classroom, but not all of them. And it wasn't a requirement because it didn't need to be at the time. And so, so proud of our staff, like on-demand learning and growing, and the level of professional development. A couple of our district department supervisors was able to provide, along with our library and media specialists. Library media specialists are amazing. Professional learning right there, and created an anytime professional learning page for teachers so that they could be up and running and learning how to use not just Classroom and Meets, but how do we engage students with various types of programs? How to use Screencastify, how are you using Kahoot in a new way? How are you presenting? What are some good tasks? How do you create good independent asynchronous tasks that students can do on their own? And then how do you use the time wisely when they're in your class for that 30 minutes at the time? And so those were all challenges that people kind of rose to the occasion, considering that we kind of got it up and running in about a week of what we needed to do. So I have to say, we were in it through that year. And grading, like, how do you do grading on this piece, and as you're waiting for guidance with the, with the Connecticut Department of Education provided, but still some people are motivated by the grade, right? And so how do we focus on feedback and really think about feedback in a way that's going to continue to move learning? And so we learned from that to kind of think about, well, now we know in terms of posting or setting up our Google Classrooms, we have a general framework for all teachers so that students aren't looking at, multiple different classroom setups. They know how to find things. So now we have a consistent framework. This is what it will entail. This is how it should look. We're not just posting, we're putting in materials so that students can find it under topics, which I think has been helpful. We're still working on this new piece now that we're synchronous. How is it that we're going to make sure we're posting things in a way that, again, is uniform for students? So, some don't get it Saturday night, some get it Monday morning. And again, we're grading, but how do we do that in a way for us where you have one group in front of you that you can give that kind of in-person guidance? At the same time, you have students who are independent. So what's fair? Like what are the appropriate type of assignments given your level of interaction? And so those are some kind of new challenges. I feel like we've learned a lot. We've continued we have an anytime learning page for our staff. So we've continued that professional development. And now teachers are using like Nearpod, right? How do we kind of engage students with new platforms? But I loved what Douglas Fry said today about like stopping, and it allows you to kind of do that interactive video piece while still kind of checking for learning and understanding in those pieces. And so we're still like, we're not in pandemic teaching per se, but this new of blended learning is different. And so providing supports for our staff, but also guidance for our students, and asking for lots of grace and mercy from our parents and our students. As someone said, there's no handbook really. And so we're kind of moving this along, but still holding the standard of expectations and student success. So that's where we are as we're entering into this new phase.
That's great. Thank you. So Nancy, you want to talk kind of a little bit about that learning curve from March to how things are going right now?
Sure, and to pick up the extent to which Barbara and Joy have delineated the journey that we have all shared, March to the present, and the challenges and the timeline and how it shifted so unexpectedly for all of us. Many of the same issues, but working with the high school students in the spring, we were faced with slightly different challenges in that there were shifts in the workforce in Connecticut as employees who were heads of household or parents in general sometimes had to leave their positions to be home with their students when the state shut down and all learners were at home. And other reasons why adult employees left the Connecticut workforce. In turn, so many of our high school students were hired to fill those positions. And so that became a different and immediate concern for us at the high school level. We needed to meet our students more than halfway in terms of when they were available for learning and how could we best continue to support them and ensure that no gaps or no gaps that normally or that we anticipated would evolve. So very interesting, but exciting challenge too, to work with students at our level to help them through their service in Connecticut and across the country at that unprecedented time. As Joy mentioned, grading was a real challenge for us spring, and we're continuing those conversations into fall now with implications for class rank and GPA and implications for scholarship as we inched closer to the end of the year. And again, the extent to which academic performance in the springtime typically influences student placement for the fall. But we worked our way through that and were able to end things very successfully, I think, in the interests of all students. As we returned this fall, our greatest challenge has been supporting our staff. And again, like our students in the spring, meeting them with where they are at. Because the expectation for instruction in the spring was informally that for synchronous learning. But we weren't there in person administratively to help them and to crush that immediate learning curve that they faced in terms of technology and proficiency. But this fall, with the expectation that our distance learners are involved in classes via live streaming, we really have had to work swiftly and efficiently, effectively to support our teachers, again, where they're at. Keep their confidence at the highest levels possible for them. Establish the relationships where they feel comfortable saying, I really am not comfortable, I'm not good at this and I need help. More than ever, internal resources, helping teachers help themselves and each other. They are their own best resources sometimes. But the transition this fall to the synchronous model and the live streaming, that has been a challenge, and we're working our way through it. And as I referenced the students before, I think the teachers are excited that they can do it too. I got this, or I learned this last week, or so-and-so showed me this, and now I tried it today and it worked. So always looking for the positive amidst any challenge, like Joy and Barbara.
That's great.
Can I say something?
Sure.
So, there was this kind of quote passing around on social media that said every teacher is going to experiencing the first year of teaching, right? And I thought about that, and I said you could think about that multiple ways. There's something frightening about that, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. But there's something exciting about your first year. You are growing and learning and relying on I think about when I was first in the classroom, relying on your colleagues, on wisdom. And so you worked harder. I worked harder than ever before, but there is that other side to it too, which I think teachers are finding as well. Not that we wanted it per se, but there is that silver lining, so to speak, in the midst of it all.
Well said.
That's great. So, thinking about your teachers and how they've, risen to the challenge, what's some of the, good high quality instruction that you've seen, whether it was, last spring or even now that you have been impressed by, that where teachers are really addressing the needs of all their students, and, whether it's a technology use or something creative that they're doing, and it could be whether it's remote or in person, just kind of highlight some of that good instructional practice that you've seen that is meeting the needs of the students in your schools. And we want to start with you, Barbara.
Sure. So I think, first and foremost, we have two different styles of teaching and platforms of teaching here in our school happening at the same time. So there's like a learning curve for those two different things happening. I want to start with our instructional coaches, being the ones that have really supported the teachers in terms of, I think the biggest challenge right now is just, are we pacing like we can pace to the best of our ability? Are we teaching this at the same rate? And the answer is no, but can we strive for that as a goal? So, yes, we have all of these curves and obstacles to overcome, but we have to continue to teach and try to teach at the same pace, if possible, as though we were in school full time. And so, help the coaches being there in the classroom, supporting the teachers, going through the pacing calendars and kind of saying, this is our goal, is to try to maintain the same pace that we would have if things were normal. And then, teachers having different approaches, different obstacles, because they have kids behind cubicles. They don't necessarily, the turn and talks are not the same as what they used to be. And then, trying to get around to every student. The proximity of kids is more difficult because, we have a different classroom setup. So I think pacing, number one, first and foremost, is right there as a challenge for in-person as well as the assessment. So we are starting to do running records and, just keeping pace while we're trying to assess each child individually. And then, the distance learning has it's a different ball game. So how do I teach at the same pace when I have to worry about, is every student online right now? And if not, we've got to call the office. The office calls the parent. Where's this child? Or the parent calling, hey, we can't get logged in right now. Can you help us? So And then the teachers online trying to figure out how to do breakout groups, how to keep, the majority of their kids engaged while they work with a small group of kids or individually. The conferring and the small group work is, definitely an obstacle that we're trying to overcome. So I'd say, with all of those obstacles, we're doing pretty well. We have the advantage of being here 5 days a week and full time. So our goal is to continue on with that pacing and assessing as close to normal as we would. So in a way, it's much more challenging, but we feel really good about what we've gotten through so far with just having been in school for just 2 weeks and a little bit more than that. So it's exciting, and it is challenging and exhausting because it's nonstop work, but it's definitely rewarding, as Joy says.
That's great. Have teachers are they using some different types of technology tools than they have used in the past in order to try to, again, meet the needs of all their students?
Yeah, so I don't know if I can do shout outs for any specific types of programs that are working well for us, but we just had some PD yesterday, and Jamboard was one of the big suggestions, and we have teachers using Jamboard, and it makes it very interactive. And if teachers can get their anchor charts that they would have behind them on a Jamboard whiteboard, and if they can draw and kids can interact on that, it's pretty close to having them right in front of you. So, in a way that's probably even more accessible to kids because they can see the screen maybe better than they might be able to attend to an anchor chart being 3 rows back in a classroom. So I think there's definitely some advantages. In fact, one of my distance teachers in 5th grade said to me today, you know what, he's pointing to 3 screens and he's like, this is better. And then he's like, I think I like this better than being in person because I can see all my kids. I have everything at my fingertips, and he's got Go Guardian where he's filtering and making sure that everyone is using their computer appropriately and getting alerts. And, they're aware of that he's monitoring everything they do. So he's like, you know what, this is not a bad thing. So I think Jamboard is definitely one. We had to, as a district, decide about whether or not we're going to go with Google Meets or Zoom for our meetings. And we ended up sticking with Google Meets because of the accessibility for parents coming into PPT meetings especially. We were having difficulty with parents getting access to Zoom, and Google Meets was much more accessible. So our PPTs, we're able to get through a PPT in a half an hour, which is, 1 hour was the typical. So we're catching up on all of the annuals and triennials and everything. And, my PPT day is jam packed, but I'm probably able to be almost twice as efficient with that as well. So it seems to be going really well.
Great. Joy, what have you seen in terms of instruction? Some good positive things that you've seen in your classrooms that your teachers are doing?
Well, we started this year saying when we're in, like I said, structure your classroom like you're virtual because we don't know what's going to happen. And so even when they're here, I think the fact that I see students using the Chromebooks are out, they come in the morning, they choose their number, they do what they need to do. But I am impressed with the way that they're still kind of keeping in line with our district pieces of trying to make sure students are engaged, actively engaged, and then how are they kind of being the owners of their learning. And so there's an opportunity. I heard Doug Fry talked about that today. And so, we're using different platforms for that. In the spring, I remember dropping into a science class, and she's got all of them there, and they're working through the sheet that she had kind of posted, and they are sharing their information using Padlet, similar to how you might do Jamboard, but they each had, and what did you think about what this person said and what this person said? And I'm like going, yes, but they're still doing round robin in terms of answering questions. So some of it doesn't always have to be different, right? You're looking at the platform might be different, but what you're doing, if you say that's good instruction, can still happen even in the virtual realm. Some of our teachers, I saw a comment about the Bitmoji classrooms, the virtual classrooms. What I love about that is I just saw one of our language arts teachers who is using it as, or say, this is my virtual bookshelf. And so that kids can click on the book choices, and they actually have a form where they're making recommendations about the good books to read and adding it to that virtual bookshelf that'll pop up in that classroom, which is wonderful. The fact that we can now do virtual author visits. Our library media specialists had this kind of program called Live from the Library, and they had virtual authors. We had 3 or 4 authors that in the spring that we were bringing in, talking about books with kids, and they're continuing that, thankfully, with a grant from from the West Hartford Foundation, where they're bringing in authors that we couldn't do that before. Now everyone across the district, all of our middle schoolers, families can jump on, whether you're remote or in the hybrid model. And I mentioned Nearpod. I think we're also trying to figure out what's a platform that we can kind of help students and teachers do some formative assessment, but also build in that interaction, because there's whiteboards, there's sticky notes, there's things like that that they're using to try to make it available not only for students to interact, but also teachers to kind of monitor where they're going, how they feel. And so I love the fact that they're differentiating and that they're thinking about how to use the tool to enhance what they know is right to do instructionally. So that's where we are, and there's still professional learning, there's still development, but what I love is, I think you said it, Nancy, is colleagues are teaching colleagues, and it's really giving them an opportunity to shine in a way, because you can do it virtually, right? You can bring in a group that maybe you didn't have the same platform before, and now you have that platform. And so it's really nice to see our teachers shining and sharing the knowledge that they have with others.
That's great. What are some things you're seeing in your classrooms, Nancy, at Bunnell?
We've had the luxury, this is our 3rd year being a one-to-one school with Chromebooks. Sure. So I had not yet mentioned that. So we've had that very strong foundation on which to build. And actually the transition to this live streaming model has pushed us as a school to take steps further to being paperless and really striving to meet that mark of an electronic system, which I've always believed is the best preparation for our students at post-secondary. So I'm very proud of the teachers who are bravely navigating that really steep challenge of transition right now. With that said, again, echoing what Joy had referenced as well, it's teacher collaboration that's carrying the day. I'm sorry, we need to pay the light bill here, I say. There I go. Sorry, guys. To pick up on teacher collaboration in terms of supporting student engagement. So we really continue to utilize our tutors, our reading teachers, our specialists, and particularly our ESOL teacher, who is collaborating at great length. And again, the library media specialist. Lots of push-in occurring throughout the building, throughout the day. And as Barbara mentioned, when a teacher has a student who perhaps has not yet logged in, the teacher doesn't necessarily have to stop, but can reach out to that colleague who may be joining him or her in that class to say, hey, can you get on the phone with so-and-so right now? Or can you scoot an email directly to that student and say, we're waiting for you, we're looking for you, et cetera. Is everything okay? In terms of, again, picking up what Barbara and Joy have shared, in terms of the technology, I'm really proud of the staff in terms of those over the summer who pursued the certification with Google. And so our teachers are really utilizing the Google Suite and the accompanying tools. Teachers at the high school level are using the Zoom breakout rooms, and they're blending their in-person learners with their distance learners to enrich discussion and really keep the connections home to school, school to home live and enriched. And again, celebrating teachers who are trying and those who are helping each other. The first week or so of school, teachers who were familiar and comfortable with Bluetooth technology were helping those for whom it was new to show them just how effective that is in our high school classrooms, to allow the teacher to be mobile and to have the best quality of delivery of that lesson live streamed. So celebrating here our technology foundation, as well as the teacher's ability to support one another and intervene on behalf of those at home and those in front of them.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. So one of our sessions today was Dr. Joanne Freiberg, who spoke about really attending to the importance of the social and emotional health of our students, and making sure our schools are safe places, and the importance of connections between students, certainly among each other, but with their teachers and with their school. So I'm kind of wondering, in each of your settings, first, what are the challenges? And I think we can imagine them, but has there been something specific that's been a challenge in that regard? And then what are some of the things that you've done either as a school or what teachers are doing to really reach out to students, build those connections, whether it's virtually or in person, and with families, to attend to the social and emotional well-being of your students? Whoever wants to start.
Go ahead, Joy.
All right, so I have to say, like, I love Yale, and so Ruler's been pushing things out since the spring. And so if you want to go to their Ruler YouTube, they have all these webinars that has been fabulous, from parents to teachers, so that, really kind of meeting folks where they are. One thing our district has done is we have advisory, like I've heard mentioned here. And so there was a district piece where this summer, teachers came together to create social emotional learning lessons, as well as social justice, anti-racist education lessons. And so we started that this week with building the foundation of, social emotional learning, but it's using Nearpod, but a clear based way that we kind of introduced our staff to during our 5 days of prep before we started again. And so it's really putting us all across the district, elementary through 12, at the same piece. We know it's important to check in. We know it's important to build community, and it's important to do that before you can have tough conversations about social justice. And so I'm really excited by the fact that we have this kind of one way to do that. In addition to, for us being a Ruler school, knowing that, how do we want to feel when we come in? I think my biggest surprise is as we started welcoming students back, first with our web orientation, they don't talk to each other. Like, it's been a long time to navigate. They're standing right next to each other. And I remember seeing some 8th graders, I'm like, you're outside, it's a mass break, like, you're not talking. They're like, well, Miss Wright, usually we throw a football. So it's a new way of kind of being when you don't have the things because of safety, right, that you would normally do, that kind of pass the ball or do things. So we're still navigating and trying to figure that out. One thing that, and if anyone on here, please email me, we want to start doing virtual clubs. Like, we have to figure out another way. We can't do it in person, but starting that process in the next couple of weeks of bringing kids together virtually to build community. But it's our teachers during our advisory, where we're not committed to an activity or a lesson, taking kids out. One of my teams did, they are called Opal Island. They've named themselves, it's Opal, but they've said they're Opal Island. So they have Opal Island bingo, and the kids are going around and they're doing those kind of icebreaker pieces to try to see, what do we have in common? How can we make friends? Because that's what, right, school is about anyway, but how do you do it in a safe way? But right now, it might have to be guided by teachers, because for 6 months, they may have been on kind of lockdown as students. And then how do we provide those informal structures like a virtual club, so that they can kind of go with their passion and take it a different way, in the way that they're used to doing. And so we're navigating it, but we recognize it has to happen to build that community that students are used to having.
Terrific.
So I'll
you
jump in. Yeah,
Sure.
so, we've had conversations since spring with our leadership team about concerns when kids come back to us. We have in our world today so many students that are exposed to trauma, and we knew that, with this situation with COVID, there would be kids that had experienced trauma, living at home, maybe losing a family member themselves, and just having, situations at home that they would, have to deal with almost on their own in some ways. So we wanted to have a plan for when we were back in session. And so one of the things that we did was we're implementing the DESA universal screener. It's through the CASL, social emotional learning. And so what we'll be doing in October is having every teacher complete a rating scale for every one of their students. And that is sort of a way of screening out tier 1 and bringing forth any students that may have in need of further social skills instruction or trauma support, coping skills instruction, and then, you know, those kids receiving a little bit more instruction through our counselors as needed, and then the tier 3 supports as needed. We were not knowing what to expect when kids came back to school, you know, what it was going to be like. We've had a couple school refusals. You know, that attachment to their parent or the fear for whatever reason, maybe feeling like, you know, absorbing some of the stress that the parents feel and just being nervous about being in a school environment. Most of those we've been able to case by case handle and, you know, give counseling support or work with the parent and the student to resolve their initial fears. But as we get more comfortable, I mean, overall, as a whole, the students are amazingly resilient and, you know, coming back, happy to be here, having missed school and being with their friends and being with their teachers. They love it. And they're more respectful, I would say, and happy, working harder because they're appreciative of their opportunity to have school. As they become more comfortable in our situation, I think we're starting to see some of those kids that have experienced trauma feeling safe to let go and to talk about that. And so we are seeing little bubbles of little crises kind of come up. And, you know, I think that's to be expected, that they're feeling comfortable and they're safe and they know they have people that they can trust and rely on. And so we're addressing those things as needed. But overall, the majority of kids are doing great. So that's another learning curve for our teachers. We're promoting during our advisory period, the teachers are implementing the second step curriculum. One observation that I've made is that they're not in the hallway like they would be, you know, having conversation. They're not at their lockers having normal conversation. They're distanced during recess. So cafeteria, they're spread way apart. So we're reducing the opportunities for them to develop their social skills too. So while it's quieter, you know, there's that social interaction is awkward for them. They don't, like you said, they're more comfortable throwing the football and just having things be normal. So it's a different approach to social emotional instruction. I'm going to mute now because my phone is ringing. Sorry.
I didn't know which of us that was.
Could have been anybody, right? Nancy, how about you with attending to students' social and emotional needs?
It's great to hear Barbara and Joy celebrate, as we do, the resiliency of our students. It is a beautiful thing. It brings joy to us all here at Bunnell and all of us in education, I think, right now. And also, it's interesting for me because, Joy, we are transitioning from another program, SEL program, to Ruler this year. So I'm anxious to continue to learn from you and the success that you have had at your school using that program. We were fortunate to be able to have a virtual freshman orientation this year. We call that our link crew, and we were able to execute virtually, which was really important for our freshmen. I still feel badly that they came to school literally the first day not having ever been in our building. That in and of itself had to bring a little trauma, but they continue to rise to the occasion. Beyond all those points, though, I wanted to share that our mantra at Bunnell in the springtime was do no harm, which so many of us adopted as, I'm so sorry about this. Here we go. There we go. So we have moved from do no harm really to another common phrase, and that is Maslow before Bloom. And I have begun that year with the teachers as our working mantra. We've got to ensure that our students are whole, socially, emotionally, that their hearts are intact and they are ready to embrace their learning before we should go down the achievement road. The first 2 weeks, really, we have dedicated ourselves to just reestablishing those relationships that were affected so profoundly when we left so abruptly. It affected our staff, it affected our students, and the trauma, we just don't know what the effect of that is or actually necessarily what it looks like right now. So we are talking always about relationships. In the spring, I said to the staff, listen, I want you to remember that we've got to commit to having our students prepared to re-engage with us personally, socially, emotionally, before we then in the fall talk about learning gaps and achievement gaps. And so I think our staff, like, you know, Joy and Barbara described, their staffs did a wonderful job keeping kids connected. And so simple phrases, I think, keep us moving. And if we maintain the emphasis of Maslow first, we're going to continue to strengthen ourselves as a school, as a learning community, and we'll fill those gaps that currently may exist.
So that Maslow's before Bloom is, we've heard, that's probably the third or fourth time we've heard that today. And in terms of that prioritization of students' kind of safety needs, and not to minimize the academic component of what schools are all about, but in terms of prioritizing student safety and well-being so that they're able to learn. We've heard that loud and clear from pretty much every speaker today. So it's nice to hear that echoed. So I want to give each of you an opportunity to reflect a little bit on being named Principal of the Year at your individual levels, elementary, middle, and high school. And each of you, as I read just a portion of a much longer bio and could talk a lot more about the accomplishments of each of you, but just give you a chance to reflect a little bit on what your leadership path has been and what advice you would give as a recognized school leader, and to share with your colleagues, and to give you a little bit of a platform to brag a little bit and to share some leadership guidance, some leadership advice for the other school leaders who are listening today. So who'd like to start? Barbara's talking, but we can't hear you. So. Is your phone still ringing?
I recommend Dr. Dowling starting. She hasn't had an opportunity to go first.
Okay.
I'm ready. In terms of, I am completely humbled, let me first say. And as humbled as I am proud. I'm so proud to have a platform and an opportunity to speak for high school leaders across our state. These, as we have said, these are unprecedented times. Leadership now is more important than it has ever been. And however many years each of us has had in the principalship, it has changed. This experience, this crisis has changed how we lead. And we have had to find our best and truest selves to step into these new roles and into the new age of leadership. So I'm humbled, but I do feel more than ever that my role and position as principal is a vocation. And it's something that I've been put here now in this time to give my best and to give my all in the truest sense for my students, their families, for my staff, and again, for principals across our state. So it's a very, very exciting time, one that I don't think we anticipated we would be in when we submitted our applications many, many months ago. But our purpose has never been more defined, I think, as principals. With that said, instead of PPE, I'd like to talk about PPA. And that's patience, personalization, and advocacy. We know as principals, any of us in a leadership position right now, you must exercise utmost patience in every situation for every person with whom you interact, whether it's your custodian, your secretary, the security staff, every parent. Patience, because their situation is truly unique to them. There's so much emotion in all of us are experiencing. Patience must carry the day now more than ever. It's not just a word we use as leaders. It really has to be at the heart of every interaction. Beyond that, personalization. Remembering and reminding ourselves that we are modeling every moment of every day and through every interaction what we expect of our teachers. And that is to take the time to personalize every interaction with every student. Develop those relationships as we were just talking about, because that's what's going to carry them into tomorrow through the end of this year and the rest of their lives, truly, these little ones all the way up to my high school students. So personalization more than ever. And lastly, advocacy. As school leaders, situations and needs are unique to us in our respective buildings. And now more than ever, we need to have our voices reflect what the needs are for our kids, for our families. I am part of a larger district, and I have a sister school, a sister high school, which is also unique as to so many districts across the state. So I truly need to have a voice for the students of Bunnell High School, for the staff of Bunnell High School, with what's going on here at this time. So you hear the passion, you've heard a shift in my voice. And again, how important this is right now. And to be the principal of the year is I think embodies the passion that I have for the role of principal and the commitment that I bring to the role. And so I'm proud to do so. And it's really a pleasure to have this opportunity to speak with everyone today. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations, and very nicely said. All right, Joy?
So as Nancy said, it's humbling, right? No one, I pushed that button and didn't expect to win. Personally, it was just a difficult year even before COVID, and I'm just honored for someone nominating me and that it happened. And I see leadership in this way is anywhere where I've been, it's because of the people that I've worked with. And so there's a saying that the smartest person in the room is the room. And I think if I were to say leadership advice, that's the piece. It's not, you don't lead alone. As Nancy mentioned, you don't lead alone, you lead with a group, and you lead together for the purpose of supporting your students, your staff, and your families. And so I am just grateful for, I kind of say the people who grew me, because it's through every interaction, every opportunity with each of our staff, and I'm going into my 8th year here at KP. And I remember when I told them, that I was selected, I said, it's because of you, because of the opportunities that you've allowed me to grow into myself and into my leadership and been patient. They were patient with me and allowed me to think about how I personalize for them. I mean, that's the reality, is that, I learned at some point I couldn't lead the way that I was comfortable with. I needed to lead the way that people needed to be. Each person needed me to be there for them, which wasn't in my, that wasn't how I was like created per se, but I had to adapt. We have to adapt. We have to be flexible, because that's what good leadership is, and it does. And I think the biggest piece for me is I think about, especially now at this point, if it were to check on the teachers, like teacher wellness is so important. So is principal wellness, right? And so find your tribe, whether it's Twitter's a great piece. I have a middle school Voxer group that I've been a part of for years. And so it's just good to talk to other people and other leaders who are experiencing the same thing. And we kind of bring each other up. But you have to find that, because, and it's okay to be vulnerable. Nancy, you talked about modeling for our staff, and some of that is that vulnerability. There was a point in my staff meeting, and I'm not ashamed. I'm learning how not to say I'm sorry for things that I shouldn't be sorry for unless I've done something. But for my emotions, I was exhausted. Like, we had put together, and I said, oh, you guys, I usually do my Friday focus, and I can't. And I was like, I'm exhausted. And I became very emotional. And I was like, okay, this wasn't planned. But we all get that way, right? And and I hope what that shows them is that when you have that moment, I'm going to kind of come up and pull up beside you, because you're going to need that shoulder and that person to prop you up. And so find your tribe, make sure you have someone, but when you need to be the part of the tribe for our staff, for our parents, for our students. And I don't know. I think we just lead together. And the best thing is that whenever we're doing this, someone's being in front doesn't mean you're the only one. I guess that's the thing. And there's always a team as a part of this process. And I'm just honored that CAS selected me. Thank you so much. And whatever I can do to represent the state here and my middle school colleagues, it's just an honor to have that opportunity.
Well, thank you, and congratulations. Barbara, you want to finish us up?
I have to say, Joy, the word humble, both of you, saying that word humble, I was not the kind of person it was easy for me to accept this recognition. I do not like a lot of attention being brought to me, and I am not one to absorb a lot of compliments. So it was extremely challenging for me personality-wise to accept it, but I've learned from that. And I've learned that yes, I definitely, the first thing that came out of my mouth was I did not get here without the help and support of the people that work in the leadership above me and the people that work side by side, my colleagues and the teachers and the students. I had letters, from students that were supporting me in my application. So, it is a group village of, effort that got me here. However, I have learned that, there are some things that I did that I should be very proud of and I feel great about. I am committed, fully committed to this role, and I do feel the rewards and take it as a compliment when we have success. And I feel as though I'm doing good things and leading in a way that helps us be successful. So I've learned how to accept some of this, these compliments, and accept this role and take on the responsibility of showing that I can be a good leader and a role model and express the importance of good education and how much it helps our kids. The school closure really brought to light how important our education system is for our country, for our kids, and for our families, how schools have changed. We are not just the education, role of education. We are the social emotional support. We're feeding our kids. We're supporting them in so many different ways. And without the school system, our community really could collapse. So this is such a pivotal time to accept this honor and to take on that challenge accept it as an opportunity to make our society and help our kids and appreciate the education work that teachers do and the impact that they have on kids in our society. The recommendation for leaders is good communication, and trust. So people get nervous. They get nervous. Why is the student out? Is there a positive test? Am I going to be healthy? Are the kids going to be healthy? Can we get through this? So you have to be fully transparent and let them know, while protecting the rights of those people that may be, having things tested or whatever. We're not going to share that information, but I'm going to tell you everything I need to know, that you need to know, to help you be safe and support you along the way, so that you can feel confident that I'm not keeping anything from you as a leader, that I am here to support you. And also, courage to be here every day, to show staff that yes, we have our fears and we have our worries, but we're going to take on every day as a new challenge. And as Joy said, it's emotionally exhausting, so we do have to take care of ourselves as well as leaders. But that open communication is key, and letting teachers know that you're right there with them, and letting them know everything that you know, so that, and with parents as well, so that people feel safe and can trust you in this role. It's
Well,
such
thank
an honor.
you,
Thank you so much,
Barbara. Thank you to all of you. It's clear to me from our conversation and the discussion today why each of you was selected for this honor of being a Principal of the Year at your level. Just the thoughtfulness and the passion and the sense of connection that you have with your schools just comes through so clearly. And it's just been an honor for me to have a chance to meet you virtually and to be part of this. So I really appreciate you taking the time, sharing all of your thoughts and the journey that you've been on this year in particular, and addressing those really important needs of our students, the students in your school and the schools and the students across the state. So thank you for being here. Congratulations on your honor. And I'm going to close out the conference with a few more thank yous and just some final comments. So first of all, we had 5 wonderful sessions today, and I want to thank all of our presenters, Dr. Doug Fisher, our session 2 with Doug Casey, Jonathan Costa, Brian Cassandi, Dr. Liz Ratty, and Abby Waldron. Dr. Joanne Freiberg with our third session, Josh Ratliff from Trinity 3 Technology for session 4, and then this final wrap-up session with our 3 CAS Principals of the Year, Barbara Silverio, Joy Wright, and Dr. Nancy Dowling. I also want to thank my colleagues at CAS, and if they're willing to show themselves here, in particular, Dr. Rosie O'Brien-Voitek and Deputy Executive Director Karen Pachter, and a lot of other people behind the scenes, but certainly Rosie and Karen have done an enormous amount to make this happen and to have it come off as successfully as it has. I want to thank all of our member schools and the school leaders who work with passion and diligence on behalf of all of Connecticut students. The Connecticut Association of Schools is a member-supported and member-driven organization, and we depend on membership to keep our programs up and running. So if you are part of a member school, thank you. If you're not and you'd like to be, contact me or Rosie or Karen through the CAS website, CAS-CIAC.org, and we'd be happy to speak with you about that. And finally, I want to thank everyone here in the audience for attending one or more of our conference sessions today. We're proud at CAS to bring these high quality presentations to you. We have more coming in the future. Please watch our website for those future opportunities. It's been a great, fantastic day addressing a very important subject, and I hope you've learned something. I hope you had an opportunity to benefit from what you've heard from colleagues and experts. And I wish you a great rest of the day, a wonderful evening, a great rest of the week, and come back to CAS.